Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming. My name is Sabrina Schmidt-Gordon. I am a documentary filmmaker based in New York, and I'm also co-chair of the Black Documentary Collective, who is hosting this very special screening of Softy. I'm so proud to have the opportunity to present this film for many reasons that I will share when we start our conversation. Thanks again. The Black Documentary Collective was founded by the late documentarian St. Clair Bourne to advocate for Black documentary filmmakers of African descent. So not just in the United States, but around the world. And again, welcome. I want to introduce our filmmakers, Sam Soko. Hi, Sam.
Hey, Sabrina.
Hi. And producer Toni Kamau. Welcome.
Hey,
Hi.
thank you.
So
Hi.
you both. Thank you so much for doing this Q&A. I can't tell you, how much I appreciate it, and I think it's going to just be a great opportunity for everyone who's who's joined to hear you guys talk about the making of the film and everything else that we're going to sort of chop up while we're talking today. Why don't you both say a little bit about your backgrounds, either in film or other, whatever you feel is meaningful to kind of give folks a little bit of context about who you are and, where you're coming from.
Thanks so much for doing this, Sabrina, and having us, because you and I now we can say go way back.
Yes, yes, definitely.
So I'm Sam Soko. I'm a documentary director and producer based in Kenya, and editor, and and I've danced with documentaries for a bit, but kind of decided to take the dive into feature documentaries with Softy, which is my first feature documentary. And it's been an incredible experience, and I'm kind of addicted now.
Awesome. Hi, Toni.
Hi. So thank you so much for inviting us here. We're very excited to be speaking to the Black Documentary Collective. So I'm a filmmaker based in Kenya. I recently produced, I used to produce TV documentaries for BBC World, Al Jazeera, did a lot of corporate stuff, and then left the dark side of the corporate world to come to feature documentary production. And I think 2020 was the year that two features that I produced entered the festival circuit. One was the incredible film Softy by Sam Soko, another lovely film called I Am Samuel by a director called Pete Muremi. And yeah, it's just been amazing just getting to understand how the festival circuit works, because it's not that often that people from Kenya have had the films that they directed and produced actually get out into these A-list festivals. So it's been an incredible journey. Yeah, and excited to talk to you guys.
Yes, yes. And I've been following the journey. I want to talk a little bit about how Soko and I know each other. I had the great privilege, and it almost feels silly to, not silly, but a little almost weird to say that, I was your mentor at part of the Hot Docs program for African filmmakers. And so I was invited to mentor, I think it was 2017, right?
Yes,
right at Northwest. And you were part of that cohort. It was a small group of very talented filmmakers from around the continent. So Kenya was represented among other countries. And I just have to say how proud I am of you. And I think about the very early days of this film and seeing the very early scenes and the challenges that we were talking about in crafting the story and developing the characters and so on, and to see remember where that was and where you landed. It's just incredible. It's just so wonderful. So it's very hard for me to watch the film without thinking like, he nailed that. Very good. Like I'm wondering, how is that going to work? It's working. So it's just really great to see. And it's been such an honor to like see you on the festival circuit. I think one of the last things we did, you were very fortunate, I think, to like get into Sundance before the pandemic. The pandemic hit just about a month after. So you got to have that in-person experience with so many people, unfortunately. I mean, it's so weird to talk about what's fortunate and unfortunate. But, you know, I think Sundance was one of the last public things that I got to do. So it was very nice to be able to see you in, you know, on the circuit and see the reception of the film firsthand. And, you know, congratulations to you both. And I think that's where I met you, Toni, at Sundance.
Yes. Yeah, we met at Sundance. And then, yeah, it was, I think at the party. Yeah.
Yeah.
We met at the
party. I mean, it's so funny. Things that we took for granted suddenly seem like, wow, that's not something, you know, that was a special, you know, opportunity that we, you know, who knew that being side by side would be something that we had that we were taking for granted. But let's, you know, dive into the film. Certainly, I think whenever folks watch a film, people want to know how the filmmakers got connected with this story. So can you, Soko, talk a little bit about how you met Boniface and how you got involved?
Yeah, I can talk about it briefly, and it's again, it's incredible talking to you because you were basically there when I was like, every answer I had ended with I don't know. So in around 2013, we kind of had this idea of making a short video about activism, particularly how people put protests together. And at the same time, Boniface was like the most flamboyant, notorious, outspoken activist in the Kenyan space. So he used to put up this crazy, incredible symbolic protests. And so when we kind of talked to him and it was like, hey, how about we film one of these protests and, you know, do like a short video? And it was like, hey, cool, let's do this. And so one protest became another protest and then became another protest. And over that time, it kind of became inherent that there's so much more that happens behind the scenes that kind of, I wouldn't say taken for granted, that is unseen, that people don't necessarily see the toll that activists take, particularly on a personal level. Because a lot of the time it's more of like what the government does to the individual. You know, you get arrested, you get beaten, all that stuff. But there is an emotional toll that is taken, particularly in regards to the family. And I remember by the time we were meeting at Hot Docs, I had all this footage, and I was kind of at this conundrum where you would get people who be like, hey, how about we tell a story that speaks to the, you know, the activist struggle with the status quo. But then there was this sensitivity that was there with how the family reacts. And I'm really incredibly thankful that you guys encouraged me to kind of engage with that side, because that's what I wanted in the first place. But then you're kind of scared if it will work, because a lot of films that are made in that space don't necessarily show or have access to that side of stories. So eventually it became this love story about how people view their country and how people engage with their country, but also how they engage with their families and the love that exists there.
Yes, no, absolutely. I think, you know, since we have an audience that I think is made up of folks, filmmakers and folks who are interested in filmmaking, I do want to, you know, acknowledge and sort of add to what you said, that's often the challenge. You know, I teach documentary filmmaking to journalists, actually, and it's often one of the big challenges is to sort of make the distinction between the issue that you want to explore and the story that you want to tell. And what you have to trust is that when you find the good story, the story that people can connect to, irrespective of what they know about the political situation and activism or what have you. All of those other things are going to be illuminated by that story. But you have to find that entry point for everyone to be able to connect and not have it. And also tell you're making a film. You're not making a sort of activism manual, right? So that's always the challenge. And you obviously, you know, conquered that very well. It's always a very difficult thing to navigate when in making a film like this, you know, specifically around politics and
Yeah, it's very true.
So Toni, to talk a little bit about how you got involved with the film and like what would you say were your challenges as producer in working on the project?
Oh yes. So I met Soko. Was it 2016 or 2017?
Yeah.
Everything pre-COVID has just become a blur.
It was 2016. Yeah.
Yes, it was 2016. So I met Soko. So the film community in Kenya is quite small. At least people who are crazy enough to do indie documentaries in Kenya, because there really isn't an industry. So yeah, so I met Soko through Pete, who's the director of the other film that I Am Samuel. And Soko was editing, because Soko is a prolific editor. He's really, really amazing at story, especially for factual. So he was editing I Am Samuel, and we met during that project. And when we were getting to know each other, he just told me, "Oh, I'm also working on a documentary. So hopefully I'll get to edit it soon." And I was like, "Oh, that sounds interesting. Can I see something?" And then I watched the footage and I was like, "Oh, it's about Boniface Mwangi." I was like, "Good luck," because a lot of people have documented Boniface. So I was expecting to just see the usual stuff that I'd seen, like about him being an activist and this hagiography where he's this amazing man and he's always on the streets. But then Soko showed me some footage, and I was like, "Wow, you have incredible access to this person. Is there more?" And he was like, "Yeah, I think I have a few hundred hours more." so we started talking, I think, over the course of the year. Because at the same time, Soko was talking to Mila from I Still Film about joining the project. And around the same time, like Doc Society joined. And I was very hesitant because it was so political after I'd seen more of the footage. But then I was so intrigued by it all, just because of like how much access he had to Boniface, and didn't just show him as an activist, but showed Boniface the man. You know, you never see that side publicly. Boniface the father, Boniface the husband. And he also had such incredible access to Jerry, who really had been this kind of silent, strong woman who's by her man. And I think that was just so incredible. And at the end of the day, the reason why I joined the project to help raise financing and to just help get it seen across the world was because I knew that whether or not I joined the project, this thing would be done. So I was like, I might as well jump on the train along with everyone else. And I think everyone else made the same decision at the same time. Yeah. And I think one of the biggest challenges was because we were first-time director-producer team for feature, because I Am Samuel hadn't been released yet. I think when we went to pitch to people, that was the biggest concern. Like, how are you going to get this done? Like, how? I remember the question that stunned me, and I didn't really have an answer when we were pitching at Hot Docs Forum in 2018, because we were the first Kenyan director-producer team to get in. There were so many firsts to this project, and I remember being asked by one of the people at the table, "You two are Kenyan. How are you going to make a story that's accessible to Western audiences?" I remember I gave some answer, I gave some answer, I can't remember what I said, but I think that really floored me, because I think that was the first time I was hit with the reality that because we come from Kenya, there's always a lot of like shifting of lenses and accommodating things, you know? And then where's the balance? Like, do you want it to be a film shot in Kenya yes, with a Kenyan director, but it's not a Kenyan film because it's told in a Western way? Or do you want to do something that's so Kenyan that no one else can access it? So I think for us, that was, I think, one of the biggest challenges, making those decisions as a co-producer team, outside of raising the finance, was really navigating that question.
Yeah. Yeah. So I actually want to talk a little bit more about that because what were you thinking initially, Soko, when you were thinking about your film, about who you wanted your audience to be? And let me just put that in a little context because I think it's perfectly valid. Like if someone's asking you, how is this going to translate, for example, for a Western audience, it could be because you're hoping to release it in the US and abroad or so on. I remember working on a film that was based called Mrs. Gindo's Daughter, which was based in Mali, but we were funded by American funders, and it was for an American, it was to be aired on public television in the United States. So we had to answer that question if we wanted to do. So you know what I'm saying? Like, it's. Did you feel like that was something imposed on you, or something that you always wanted to do, or just how did you just think through, like, who am I making this film for?
And in quite a bit of the time of the film, the intention was to make this film for a Kenyan audience, and it was like, this is a film because, again, beginning, the idea was to encourage them to do something about the situation that they're going through, but as things moved on, you kind of you realize that there's a kind of universality in the conversations and what's going on. And with, actually, you'd say, since Brexit into everything else that's been happening over that period, the world kind of found itself in this spot, in like, we're in one crazy mess, and everybody was trying to figure out what's going on. And in our case, the same things were happening in Kenya with our election and everything that was going on. So it kind of just became this thing that is like, yes, this is our story and it's made for our people, but other people can connect with the film. And I remember very well, like, this one time someone asked, this is so crazy. So it was after, like, one of the sessions we were having at Hot Docs, and then we were together. I think we were having wine or something, and then someone walked to us, and then they asked, what are you working? And I think they asked you first, and then they asked you what film are you working on? Oh, you say you're a producer and you have a film at the festival called Quest. And then they asked, what was Quest about? And then I remember up to that point, how I was pitching Softy was very traditional. It was like, this is a film based in Kenya. It's about this thing and this thing that's happening here. But then you said, this is a film about a family that's struggling in one of the most unequal places in the US. You never brought up the fact that they were Black. And I remember after the gentleman left, I turned to you and I was like, why didn't you say they were Black? and you were like, it doesn't matter. That's not what the story, like, them being Black is inconsequential to what the story is about. And I was like, damn, that is so profound. And sorry, yeah.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, because that just tells us, like, okay, what is the film that we're making about? And the film we're making about is a film about that question of what comes first, your country or your family. And it really doesn't matter where the story takes place.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's interesting. It's so funny. It's like, God, you remember these things.
That's an amazing anecdote.
And I think, and I want, just for the folks that are listening, like, I wouldn't quite say that, that they are Black in America is inconsequential, but I often answered that question in such a way that I wanted to disrupt the assumption that people were making. So depending on the context and the way in which, and I mean, you were there, so you knew the context.
Had a bit more context,
yeah. You want to disrupt, you want to amplify certain things, but you also want to disrupt some of the assumptions that people make and some of the easy ways people have about thinking about things, or the ways in which they want to put things in a certain compartment. Because one of the goals that I had, like, I'm very transparent, like, in when I think about the films that I make, because I'm interested in social justice, I am very transparent about, like, what my objectives are. I have a plan here. It's not just stories for story's sake, because I feel like I have it's almost, in my view, that's irresponsible when we think about the impact stories have on our lives, our culture, and so on. And so one of the things I wanted to do is that I wanted to make sure that the story of the family in quest wasn't treated as if it's a marginalized story. I really want to center it as this is the American experience as much as any other experience. It's not like there's the American experience and there's these other sort of offshoots or these sort of like marginalized people. No, this is America. They are central to America and the American story. So I just want to,
and I don't know, like
exactly.
And it's so, because that genuinely speaks to us in kind of like balancing how we speak and share, talk about our stories, because a lot of the time our stories are marginalizing, like, oh, it's a film from Africa. Like nobody would care even to watch it because
it's too far away.
Yeah, it's too far away. There's nothing in there that I'm going to understand.
And God forbid that people think a story from Kenya or from any African country is about a love story and is about like making these very existential choices around, your work, your activism, your family, your children. It's as if people almost expect a sort of like PSA or something about a given and not this more complicated story. So to the extent that I helped frame that and inspired that, all that's awesome. Let me ask Toni, one of the things that we're talking about a lot, and this kind of segues very nicely to that, like whether you're in the United States, whether you're in Latin America, in the Caribbean, or in Africa, we are all, I think, in our industry, especially like as filmmakers of color, are really interrogating and challenging and talking about who tells our stories. Because whether even though these may sort of express themselves in different ways, I think there's sort of a through line that like often stories about people of color have often been told by, frankly, through a white lens and through, or at least a lens of folks who are not at all connected to the stories in which they are telling. Do you want to talk a little bit about what that looks like in terms of your work, and maybe in terms of like, or how people are talking about that in the Kenyan filmmaking community?
Yeah, so that's an amazing, so thanks for that question. And FYI, I also watched Quest, I think at Sundance, and I absolutely loved it. It was my favorite film.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, even before I knew, that you two knew each other, I was just like, oh my God, that film is amazing. So I think, that's an interesting question. And I'm just going to go back a little bit, because a lot of people in Kenya, at least the people in our circles who are entering the independent documentary space, either come from NGO video production for foreign NGOs working in Kenya or across Africa, or come from a service production background. Like I'm also a service producer. So a lot of times as a service producer, at least before I even understood this space existed 7 years ago, what I would get these foreign journalists from Europe or the States coming to Kenya saying, oh, we'd like to interview these characters, we'd like to do a story about this and this and this. Can you cast these people for me? So you were doing stuff that was crossing the line towards producing, but you were getting like maybe fixer credit or something like that. And then they would come, they would film on the ground. Sometimes you weren't even allowed to go with them on location because it's, it's sensitive. So maybe they just get a local translator. And then 3 years later, you hear that this film is in a festival, somewhere. So all of this stuff that happened in between getting the email from this client from outside until seeing it somewhere in a festival, it was kind of magical to us. Like we didn't really understand that process. And we didn't really understand, to be honest, that Kenyans or people who look like me or Soko could actually, have a position of ownership and control and leadership from conception till like the festival release. Like that was inconceivable because it was never presented as a reality to us. And then this documentary fund called DocuBox was started at 2013. sorry, I'm going back to the genesis because it's important to our journey, by this lady called Judy Kibinge. And she had this crazy idea where she said, okay, do you have a feature project or something that could be a feature? Come and we'll help you get it financed and we'll take you to festivals so you can meet all of these people. So a lot of us just said, okay, let's join in, let's just hand in some ideas and let's see where this goes. And I remember like our first trip to IDFA in 2013, I think really changed a lot of thinking about who could actually get to tell stories, that people who looked like me could get stories. When I saw Roger Ross Williams, he was a mentor and he was a person of color, and he was pitching, I mean, he was talking about his process for God Loves Uganda, and he was explaining it, and he totally demystified it, because I'm going to sound naive, but honestly, I thought this was a thing that Westerners, white people did, like because they had access to public money. I did not really see people of color. So I think for myself and the other, Kenyans who went on this first festival trips, seeing people who look like us, I mean, different cultures and backgrounds, but seeing them and talking to them openly about their journey, like made us understand, oh, this is possible. And we started having conversations as filmmakers and came together over the years, formed groups, like we're part of a group called Film Therapy, where we exchange our processes, because we understood from the journey that we went through that it was important for people to, for us to demystify our own journey. Before we went to Sundance, Soko and I like spoke to other filmmakers about the process, applying to Sundance, because even before then, no one really thought that you could get into Sundance with a Kenyan directed and produced documentary. And I think for us, that's really important, to continuously demystify it and to be open about our process, because we did not receive that benefit as people who were service producing, especially for foreign journalists. And nothing against that. I think it was a two-way thing. Like maybe they didn't want to be open about their process for various reasons. And then we didn't ask. Okay, I didn't ask because I did not see it as a reality. So I think it's an interesting space right now, because there's a bunch of Kenyan films and East African films that are out there. And we are trying as much as possible to just, be an open book, work. Soko is producing younger filmmakers, I'm working with other filmmakers as well, to just be able to let them understand this is possible, this can be done. Because I think that was the biggest challenge, and still is a huge challenge in Kenya, that it's actually possible. Yeah.
Interesting to hear articulated the notion that that was something that even that you couldn't take for granted, that a film made by Kenyans, like that,
yeah, exactly.
That's like that would never make it. And I mean, it's just yeah.
Yeah.
To hear it articulated, it's just it's very frustrating, I must say. But I think the fact that your film is the first Kenyan film to premiere at Sundance maybe says a little bit something about what is possible when you let people tell their own stories.
Thank you.
That you
but I just wanted to make a small clarification, because also there's the danger of saying that you're the first ever to do something. I mean, there was a fiction film by Wanori Kahio, a short that did get into Sundance. So we are the first Kenyan directed and produced documentary.
Yeah. Documentary. So I'm sorry. I tend to forget about fiction. Sorry.
No worries. Yeah. And there were other people doing documentaries or films that got into big festivals, but it was isolated, and it was always part of a process that was not fully owned and controlled by Kenyans.
Yeah. That's something that certainly needs to change, right?
I was going to say, I think it's important to kind of see and understand. I think in our experience, it's kind of seeing how the benefits of you telling a story about a space that you comprehend and understand. And there is a difference with how that story comes out and how another story by someone else who comes to do it comes out. And even there's an experience with even the subjects or the characters in these films and how they relate and engage. And even after, when you're showing the that experience is different as well, because you're now you're basically showing a film to someone who you meet at the supermarket. So it's and they can literally stop you and be like, hey, what did you mean when you did this and this? And that's very different. That's a different experience, but I think it's a much welcome experience that we have to continue to encourage.
And just to contextualize it again for those who are listening, that we're talking about um, um, having a voice in the telling of our own stories. I mean, it's just very strange to me. It's very strange to me, the notion that like you can tell a story about anybody, and this is filmmakers of any background, without the participation of the community that you're telling the story about. There's something so weird to me sometimes that like this is such a big debate, and I'm like, it's so weird that you would not engage folks and humble yourself to know that you don't know what you don't know, and you bring people in to tell the most and how that helps serve them telling the most authentic story. So we're not talking about not collaborating and so on, but like we should be giving voice to the folks about whom we're telling these stories, who are actually giving the most are the most vulnerable at the end of the day, because they're sharing their stories with the world. It would behoove us to make sure that we do justice to those stories. There are some questions that are coming in from the audience, which is actually leading to one of the questions that I had for you. Someone has a question: how was your film crew allowed to film behind the scenes, with the soldiers and with the police? I mean, you get amazing footage of that. So Soko, definitely talk about how you did that, and I have a follow-up question for that.
So it took a, because at the beginning I think all of us are kind of, okay, not kind of, we were very scared to film at protests. But then I think over time we filmed a ridiculous amount of protests that at some point, I won't say we were numb, but we were very, we became very, we kind of already knew how to anticipate when things were going to happen or what's going to happen. Like we would arrive at a protest and be like, there's definitely tear gas that's going to be thrown. And then you would say, if you were maybe a 2-man crew or 3-man crew, you'd be like, okay, you go stand behind the cops, I'll stay with the protesters, you film with Boniface, that kind of thing. Like we kind of learned to engage in this space. And I think there's a very interesting part in the film. For instance, when Boniface was shot, we didn't, of course, that's not something you would even think would happen, but we kind of preemptively said we want to film the reaction of the police no matter what happened. Like even if they'd started, say, beating up protesters, we're like, let's stick with the cops. And it eventually just gave this just crazy policewoman laugh after shooting someone. So it's like it was just one of those things, but it's because we were there for quite a bit of time. Of course, people got hurt over, because we filmed over 7 years. So, there's people got beaten, people got arrested, someone got hit really bad one time. But I think eventually we are proud that we managed to pull through the film.
One of the questions that I had about that is I was thinking about Softy's story and his relationship with his wife. And I was actually thinking about you. You got married during the time that you were making this film.
Oh,
and
yeah.
In the same way that there's this tension between, the couple whose story we're following, I was wondering, how did you navigate that? Because I would imagine that your partner would be like, why are you doing this? Dangerous? You know what? Like, so I felt like in a way your stories are parallel in some parts of it. So
I need I need to be careful because she's probably listening. But it's very, it was very hard. Like it was very, to be honest, it was very, very tough because first in the beginning, you don't come into the film thinking you're gonna be there for that long. Like it's not a thing you're like, how long is it gonna take? That's when you're dating someone and they're like, no, I'm making this film that might take 5 years. That's not a really good conversation piece. But then I think over time, she understood the necessity and importance of the film. And if it's crazy that we actually met because she used to work for Boniface. That's how we met. So there was a kind of understanding of what the space was and all. But of course, whenever there was a protest, or especially when we were filming during the election, because she was away for school during the time for the election, it was always very interesting to ask her the question of how was your day? Because there's so many things that would happen in one day and be like, where do I start? But eventually, it's been an incredible culmination to see everything come through. Because it's by the time we were getting married, and which was around the same time we were struggling to finish the film. When again, we were privileged for her to come to Sundance and see the reaction that the people had to the film and everything. It was seeing not only the people but the family, and that for me was an incredibly rewarding moment. So yeah, it's been a journey for us as well.
Yeah. Didn't mean to put your business out there, but I was
beautiful.
Another question that someone has from the audience is that they were talking about the private moments that you were able to capture also in the film. And I think that speaks a little bit to what we were talking about a little bit earlier about like when you're making a film about like activism and a movement, it's very easy to fall into like the issue piece of it and miss the personal story. And I think too, as Toni said, she said there was so much coverage of Boniface already. So like, good luck telling a story, and how she even expected to see all the same things that she sees on YouTube and so on. And that's always a challenge when you're making a film about a public figure, to get past the soundbite. And he's a journalist, so he knows, get past the sound bites, get past this sort of like their activism and them and being able to tell a story as opposed to them just using your camera as another tool to like sort of how to get them to understand like this is a little bit different what we're doing, even though it will ultimately serve the purpose, but from a very different place. How were you able to get past that and build the kind of trust that clearly you did?
I think of course, it was very, very hard. However, one thing that happened was I had to have a relationship, like a different relationship with all the members of the family. Like, it wasn't a matter of me filming Boniface and Jerry being a consequence of me filming Boniface. It was more of like me talking to Jerry and, engaging with her to a level where she understood that her story was also important, and what she was going through was important, and what the kids were going through was important. So it just creating that different relationship allows you, when say you have a scene or a moment when Boniface is talking to Njeri, they are they ignore the fact that you're even in the room, because it's more of like, this guy knows where I'm coming from, and like both of them kind of like, this guy understands where I'm coming from, and they know what I'm trying to say in this moment. Or when they're going through a very difficult moment, they kind of trust you to be there and not necessarily be like, hey, so what are you going through, kind of thing. But what that does, it makes for a very scary first screening to both of them, because you film moments with her that he's never seen, and with him that she's never seen, and with the kids that none of them have ever seen. So when they watch the film, it becomes like it was such an emotional moment, because it kind of brought them back to a very central place. You kind of like, okay, I get where you're coming from. And that for me was a very rewarding experience as well.
Yeah, I mean, hearing them talk, sorry, just to interrupt.
Yeah, I was
but
going to say,
yeah, but hearing like Boniface and Jerry talk about, their experience watching the film, I think is also something so magical to witness, because I think Soko kind of like became each of their therapists, and separately. So so he knew a lot about both of them, and I think it was interesting because the reaction that they had and how the film affected them was that, you know, they saw themselves as they were, and they saw, you know, what they were doing to each other in different ways, which is what we were hoping that would also happen with Kenyans, that you would see this film as a mirror of society. So I think it was just so incredible just hearing them talk about it like over and over again, and it's been so amazing, like also just witnessing the change that's happened, you know, between the two, within them, and also just between the two of them. And I think that's what makes Softy so special.
Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, I can't say enough about how well, you know, what an amazing job you guys did in terms of really complicating and bringing so much nuance to the storytelling, that it's about so much. I mean, it's about an election and it's about so much more. You know, it's about so many things that almost on an existential level, like we all wrestle with, about like the choices we make and so on. And I just want to, I know we're running out of time, so I just have to give a shout out and just acknowledge the amazing women characters that you have in the film. Even though Boniface is the center, it's his journey as running for office, but you managed to do a really good job, because I think it's difficult no matter what to sort of amplify other characters when you have such a powerful like sort of protagonist, that but you really did a good job at sort of putting into focus these powerful women and how they are critical to him being able to do anything, on every level. And I want to give Toni the floor to just talk about however you want to talk about that. I just want to acknowledge it before we leave, because I couldn't not say anything about how great it was to see that.
Yeah, I mean, I think Soko's a true feminist because because I think he went out of his way, even in the filming and in the editing process, to fight for the women's, voices, to be more prominent and for the focus. And I think we all did too, as a team, even Miller, Ryan, everyone else, was choose to fight for their voices to be seen, so that it doesn't end up becoming the story of a man who has made impossible sacrifices for his country, without talking about the women who have and continue to make impossible sacrifices about their countries. Like, I think, for example, like the story of Nelson Mandela, is incomplete without Winnie, and she was vilified for a very long time until recently. And I just think it's important for filmmakers, whatever gender you are, like, to just be conscious of that fact that women's voices just tend to get erased, especially in this activist narratives. And it's really important not to do it because it's ticking a box, a diversity box, but to do it because it's essential for us, to acknowledge women's roles, which are often, unseen. Yeah. So I think, yeah.
Well, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just gonna add, in that's, for me, from the beginning, it was kind of like, I think there is a need to kind of demystify these heroes that exist around the world in the stories that we love, because we love heroes. We love propping them up and kind of pushing them around, and a lot of the time they're men. And when that happens, we forget that these men stand on the shoulders on, like, if these people they stand on the shoulders just moved one bit, they're gonna crumble incredibly. It's gonna be Martin Luther King Day on Monday, and he would not have been there without Coretta Scott King. And whenever we speak about Martin Luther and his incredible journey, we cannot forget and speak about Coretta Scott King in the same level, breadth, and height. And that's, for me, is important, because if we forget that, then we kind of, make small of really big, incredible sacrifices of these women who are activists in their own right.
Yeah. And we're both producers and editors. And so as the editor in me was so appreciative about how you were able to, how seamlessly and powerfully you interweave everyone's
Shout out. I was
story.
gonna say shout out to Mila and Ryan. You
Yes,
know.
yes, absolutely. Because there's a way in which you can include the women and they can just still feel as like they're just there as supporters or of the male figure, but their stories and their objectives and their wants and their needs were and their agency is very well drawn in the film. So again, I just want to acknowledge. I think I'm not sure if we could take one more question. I'm waiting for a little cue from the folks in behind the scenes that we don't see here that are going to tell me. Until they tell me I have to stop talking, I can take one more. I can take one more. Let me see if there's I'll either take a question, or while I'm looking at these questions, I don't know if you guys want to just talk about anything that I didn't ask you that you want to acknowledge and you want to say about anything about the process or whatever you want to do.
No, I would say I'm just incredibly grateful that it's been possible to tell a story from where we're from about our experiences in a very beautiful collaborative manner with so many other people around the world who've given us so much love. And we've seen this film go a lot more farther than we ever thought at the beginning, and that I think we just are encouraged and want to continue to encourage others who just want to speak their truth and tell their truth, and just don't be afraid, keep doing it, and somehow some way it's going to be out there and people are going to experience it.
Yeah. So I think what I wanted to say was, I mean, it's been so incredible to speak to you about the film, especially with your relationship with Soko and your knowledge about the entire process of the film and of us. So I think it's been an amazing discussion. And I think we hope that this will be the start of many more discussions, between Black Doc Collective and different filmmakers from across Africa, because it would be amazing to do projects and collaborate and speak about our experiences between African-based filmmakers and filmmakers of African descent across the world, because I think we need to do more projects together, and we need to start talking a lot more together, because our experiences, yes, they're different, but they're also kind of the same.
No, I can't say, I co-sign that 110%. I hope this is like the beginning of a collaboration, and also of building our communities, across borders and boundaries. And again, I just want to thank you both for taking the time. I know, like, what time is it there now for you? or maybe close to, I'm not sure, but whatever it is, you're up to talk to us and talk to our audience, and I appreciate that immensely. And congratulations again on such an amazingly powerful film, well done film, like across the board. It's just lovely, and I'm just so proud of you both. And I can say, Soko, I knew you when. It's just awesome. So thank you, and thank you to everyone who stuck around for the Q&A, and see you next time at the next BDC virtual cinema screening.
Thanks, Sabrina.